All right, so there's one last thing I want to show you about inserting something into a Google Doc for use in the math classroom, and that is inserting a table. So we can find it right up here in the insert menu, just where everything else was. Now, when I hover on table, it'll actually pull out a little menu to the side, and I can select what size of a table I want. It will allow me to select up to a 20 by 20. However, if I want to go back in later and add additional columns or rows, I can. So I want to show growth. So I am going to insert a table. Now, man, if I want to show growth here in terms of relationships to numbers, this table is not going to be a very good representative. So I want to modify that. So I'm going to go ahead and just highlight my table. And if I right click, it gives me table properties. And then I can say, well, I want it to be 0.5 inches wide, and I want my row height at minimum to be 0.5 inches tall. And when I do that, I see I've got much, much closer representative to a square here. So if I want to go ahead and insert a second table. Now I had 2 by 2 on that one. So this time let's do a 4 by 4. And again, I'm going to highlight my cells. I'm going to table properties. And I'm going to change this again to 1/2 inch. And I now have a 4 by 4 array or a 4 by 4 square. So we could talk here about, well, how much has this figure grown or transformed or enlarged? We could talk about area. We could talk about perimeter. What happens to the area when I double the length and double the width? I could also give a series of figures and ask the question, hey, how are these related? So we've got some different options there. Of course, I can always insert a table and use it to organize data or information. I could, if I was creating something where I wanted my students to be working with a tens frame, I could insert a 5 by 2. Now I'd want to modify this to be a little bit different because let's say I'm going to have my students represent some numbers for me. And they are going to be, let's see, we will leave that at, let's do this one at 1 inch. And we're going to put that at 1 inch as well. So I've got 1 by 1s. Okay. And now to represent the number, let's say that I give my kindergartner 7 and ask them to represent a 7 here. I could either bring this back over to drawing and allow them to do it all in drawing and save it, or I could have them come in and insert a square, a circle, a number, whatever it is that I want them to represent. So maybe we're just going to do, and I'm just going to adjust this because I'll be honest, I get a little nitpicky about stuff like this. So I want my alignment to be in the center so that when I click on it, I've got that. And I also want it to be centered that way. Okay, so I've asked my kindergartner to represent a 7. Now I could give them a dauber if I was going to print this out, or I could have them insert a shape. If I bring it over into drawing, again, they can take this chart, insert the shapes to represent the number 7, and then bring it all back over as 1. But I could also just allow them to represent it with X's. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now they have represented the number 7 in my tens chart. So that is how you insert a table into a Google Doc.